Imagine this. You return to your hometown after years away, and everything feels frozen in time. The people, the places, the atmosphere. Nothing has changed. Sometimes that brings comfort, but other times it creates an unsettling tension. And this exact feeling is triggered by a game the world had been waiting for more than 10 years. A project that was supposed to define a new era, yet arrived like a postcard from the early 2010s. This is Hytale, a game whose legend was born long before its release. It all began beautifully. An announcement in 2018, 3 years of development before that. Ambitions at a full AAA level. Living biomes, dynamic combat, procedural dimensions, deep exploration. The hype exploded. Hundreds of thousands of players watched every update, and Hypixel Studios was even taken under the wing of Riot Games. It seemed like we were witnessing the rise of Minecraft's future rival, if not its outright killer. Then came the first major red flag. The developers suddenly decided to move the entire project to a different programming language, despite previously claiming the game was nearly complete. That meant one thing: huge portions had to be rewritten from scratch. A year of silence followed. Then, an official cancellation. Everyone assumed Hytale had become yet another too ambitious indie dream collapsing under the weight of its own promises. But the project returned from the dead. Hypixel bought back the rights from Riot Games, reportedly for several $1 million, and had to rush assemble a playable build to recover the costs. That's how Hytale launched into paid early access, through its own custom launcher, forcing players to deal with extra steps just to buy and run the game. So what does this long-awaited mythologized project actually look like today? When you launch Hytale for the first time, a strange feeling hits you. It looks like a project with nearly 10 years of development behind it, yet inside you find a classic survival game you've seen countless times before. And this is the main contrast. The game carried a myth of being a genre revolution, but in reality it's a basic survival title with a few strong, yet fragmented mechanics. After purchasing and running it through the custom launcher, you're greeted by a clean menu. The first impression is solid. The character creator is genuinely powerful. Dozens of customization options. Face, eyes, accessories, clothing, even underwear. Creating the sense that the game was once meant to support a full RPG system. Next comes the choice between two modes: creative and survival. And here the core differences begin. In creative mode, the game unexpectedly opens up. Beyond traditional block placement, there are tools for large-scale world editing, terraforming brushes, distance measurement tools, area selections. Some features resemble actual dev tools. And the biggest highlight, built-in logic editors using node graphs that let you modify world behavior without mods. When it comes to creativity, Hytale has enormous potential, without exaggeration. But the strong points end there. Survival, the heart of the genre, greets you with an absolutely standard loop. You spawn in ruins, pick up sticks and stones, craft flint tools, then move to copper and iron. You build workbenches, a bed, chests, mine ore, hunt animals, craft armor. Everything is functional, but derivative. There isn't a single mechanic you haven't already seen in a dozen other survival games. And even at this early stage, it becomes clear. Hytale is trying to be both a Minecraft-style sandbox and a Valheim-like survival game, but for now it doesn't fully become either. When you switch to survival mode, it becomes clear. This is where the project's main ambitions were supposed to be. But instead of a revolution, the player gets a neat, visually pleasant, yet extremely standard survival loop. The start is as classic as it gets. Ruins, sticks, stones, crafting flint tools. Then wood, fiber, stone blocks, the first workbenches, a campfire, a chest. An hour later, copper. Another hour, iron. The pacing seems fine, but the real issue lies elsewhere. The progression ends far too quickly. The game has only 6 gear sets, from copper to mithril. And half of that list can be obtained within the first 4 to 5 hours. In a genre where the feeling of growth is the main emotional engine, this is a critical flaw. In Valheim, Palworld, or even Grounded, each new resource is an event. It unlocks dozens of items and expands possibilities. In Hytale, progression comes too quickly and too shallow. Gear tiers change, but the player never feels a true power spike. There's no sense of dominance, no meaningful step forward. Another problem, the overload of workstations. Within a couple of hours, the player already has a campfire, a tannery, a furnace, 2 types of forges, and around 5 crafting tables for different stages. Yet the items crafted through them barely expand gameplay. They exist more as gates than meaningful depth. Routine, not progression. Against this backdrop, the combat system looks comparatively better. There are shield and sword blocks, counterattacks, different weapon categories. The crossbow stands out as Hytale's handgun, fast, strong, useful both in PvE and hunting. But combat alone isn't enough to carry the genre. The core issue of Hytale becomes undeniable. The game wants to be a full-fledged survival title, but it simply lacks enough content to keep players hooked for more than a couple of evenings. If you look at Hytale as a pure survival game, combat should have been one of its main pillars. And technically, it is better than in the original Minecraft. There are timing-based blocks, thrusts, charged attacks, and unique weapon properties. Swords are more stable, daggers are faster, axes hit harder, and the crossbow is the most useful tool in the entire game, essentially the local equivalent of a firearm. 6 rapid bolts can remove half a health bar from almost any creature. But there is no depth. Fights rely on 2 or 3 basic actions, and the weapon variety doesn't meaningfully change tactics. Combat feels pleasant, but nowhere near strong enough to carry the game. The world of Hytale, however, is impressive. The surface hosts dozens of biomes: forests, swamps, mushroom groves, plains. Each features its own wildlife, from simple deer and snakes to lizard folk and grotesque cave spiders. Underground you find caves, mines, ruins, and tunnels, each with distinct visuals and atmosphere. Exploration is the game's strongest element. Discovering new structures feels like a chain of mini-adventures. A goblin camp, an underground tower, a ruined castle, a hidden crypt. Even caves have their own internal subbiomes, creating the sense of a large, handcrafted world. But there's a serious issue. Most content is cosmetic. You can travel through 10 different regions and still end up collecting the same hides, fangs, and a handful of basic materials. And despite their visual variety, many enemies behave identically. Aggro, hit, pause. After a few hours, the world stops offering challenges. It becomes beautiful, but hollow. Hytale constantly promises more than it delivers. And that feeling persists even in the areas where it genuinely outshines its competitors. The moment you start talking about Hytale's visuals, the real controversy begins. The art style feels stuck somewhere between a modernized Minecraft and dozens of early 2010s mobile clones. You can tell the artists tried: clean models, soft facial animation, well-crafted movements. But the overall style looks odd and inexpensive, as if the project never decided whether it wanted to be a contemporary game or a nostalgic homage to the era of blocky imitators. Because of this, Hytale resembles not Minecraft, but the countless copies that once filled Google Play. And that seriously hurts the perception of the project, especially when you know that, according to rumors, more than $100 million went into development. Exploration is engaging, but its variety barely affects gameplay. Different biomes, unique structures, rare creatures. All of it ultimately leads to the same resources and the same fights. The content exists, but it doesn't meaningfully change the experience. It surprises, but it doesn't immerse. And that's the core issue. Hytale is a project that tried to fuse 2 opposite design philosophies. On one side, deep survival in the spirit of Valheim. On the other, the meditative freedom of Minecraft. The result is a game that doesn't fully commit to either. Too little progression for a survival title. Too much difficulty for a sandbox. Too many visual and mechanical callbacks to Minecraft to feel like a standalone identity. Even so, there is hope. This is early access. A full adventure mode is promised, along with RPG systems and an open world with real personality. Maybe that's where the version of Hytale everyone waited for will finally appear. For now, it's a beautiful, ambitious, but unfinished project that still doesn't know what it wants to be. Let's hope that in time it finds its voice and becomes the game it always dreamed of becoming.